Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Dow. Tonight on News Channel 3 at 6:30.
The problems that they're reporting is a very small batch of bad apples.
You don't get 1,800 complaints from a handful of vacation rentals.
The heated debate over short-term rentals in Cathedral City. Tonight, we're going in-depth on Measure B and the message that both sides want voters to hear.
You're watching the Desert's news leader. This is News Channel 3, live at 6:30.
In Cathedral City, voters will soon decide the future of short-term rentals. Back in September, the City Council voted unanimously to phase out short-term rentals by 2023. In response, a short-term rental advocacy group gathered enough signatures to trigger a referendum to overturn that ordinance. A yes vote on Measure B will uphold the council's decision, while a no vote will revert to a prior set of regulations. And with just a few weeks to go until the March 2nd special election, I spoke today with both sides. First, here's my interview with three supporters of Measure B: Cathedral City residents Doug Evans, Hector Salvatierra, and Tristan Willis. Tristan, Hector, and Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to see you.
First off, for folks who are not familiar with Measure B, what is it and why do you support it? Doug.
Measure B is about a ballot measure that was forced upon the city by out-of-town investors. The City Council unanimously approved a new ordinance, tried to put that into effect for the purposes of improving neighborhood safety, reducing criminal activity, and reducing noise impacts to neighborhoods, and trying to create better neighborhoods. And Measure B, if people vote yes, will protect our neighborhoods, protect our residents, and add some stability to our neighborhoods.
How big of a problem are short-term vacation rentals? Hector?
You know what? We've had this issue for more than 5 years now. I live right next door to a short-term vacation rental, and there's many of them down my street. We've had issues, as everybody's heard before, is noises, fights, loud music. We can't let our kids, our grandkids go out to our backyard because people are using foul language. We've had a stabbing in our street on these short-term vacation rentals. We've had domestic fights, loud music every single weekend because these are party goers. That's the main problem. I mean, people parking on lawns, people parking, taking up all the parking space on the street. The hundreds of calls in the middle of the night that we have to call to let the police know, or the short-term vacation hotline. That is the main problem. And also the safety of the fact that we have constantly people coming in our neighborhood every weekend. And that is a concern for us and for families that have young kids. And we shouldn't have to go to our backyard and check it out to see if it's safe for letting our kids go out in our backyard.
Doug, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Peter, I just wanted to show you. This is a list, and I'm 6'4". Everything in pink is a homeowner that lives next to a vacation rental on 3 streets. The street I live on, Risueño, Durango, and Hermosillo. That is a pretty significant impact on a neighborhood when you have that many people that live next door or across the street from a vacation rental. On 3 streets alone, that's how long that list is.
Wow.
That's right.
Is Measure B an outright ban on short-term vacation rentals?
No, it is not. And that is, our opposition is facing it as that, but it's not, because short-term vacation rentals will still be allowed in home and HOA communities, and there will still be a shared a bedroom or shared room as long as the property is managed by the owner. So it does not ban it outright.
The no on Measure B supporters say there are only a few bad apples and that most complaints are directed at non-permitted short-term vacation rentals. Your response to that, Tristan?
From what I've experienced myself personally, every time I have had an experience with these short-term vacation rentals, either at my house that I live at currently or where I visited my grandparents' house, It feels like every time that there is a different, let's say, resident or somebody that's visiting from out of town, it feels like there's always something that happens. Countless noise complaints, and every time I feel like every time I know that there's going to be a vacation rental, I always shut the blinds and turn up the TV a little louder than I usually do.
Doug, would you like to respond to that as well?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that because the city police chief has put together a report that was presented to the city council. And over a 14-month period, there were 1,800 complaints regarding short-term vacation rentals. You don't get 1,800 complaints from a handful of vacation rentals. There were 14 vacation rentals on my street when I looked into this. This is a notebook primarily of the violations on my street and the streets behind me alone. That's not a few bad apples. And in November of 2020, the city had 136 complaints. That's the highest number they've had in the 14-month period. The vacation rental industry has known they're being watched. They've done nothing to make it better. In November of 2020, they had 136 complaints. And I know for a fact citations have been issued within the last couple of days right near us and right near people that have had problem vacation rentals for years.
These people that are causing this issue of trying to fight our yes on B are investors. They're from outside of the city. They don't live here. They live outside of the area. They do not, participate in our community events. They do not do anything for our events. They claim to bring thousands of dollars into our community, and that is not so. These people that own the property, they don't care because they're not subjected to what we are subjected to it. And it is not just a few bad apples that, it is industry as a whole here in Cathedral City.
All right. Hector, Tristan, and Doug, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Peter, thank you. And
Thank you.
we look forward to your show.
Still ahead, my interview with the opponents of Measure B, their response to the concerns of residents, and what they want voters to hear. Part 2 now of our in-depth look at Measure B. Earlier, you heard from its supporters. Now, here's my interview with some of its opponents. I spoke today with Boris Stark and Karen McQueen. Boris and Karen, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
First off, why are you against Measure B?
So, Peter, we are against Measure B because the entire measure is based around misguided information. And more than anything, we want to protect the rights from property owners. We want to protect small businesses of people who are part of the short-term rental, business. And so how we see it is that we're being treated unfairly, and we're trying to do what we can to protect best interests in the city.
I just spoke with supporters of Measure B who say that your side is made up of investors who do not live in the community and really are not affected by any of the issues that short-term vacation rentals cause. Your response to them?
I don't think that that's a fair assessment. I don't consider myself some major property investor. I'm definitely not wealthy as they're claiming. I bought a second home in a city that I really liked and enjoyed being there, that I wanted to eventually think about retiring to and being a part of that community. And, being able to short-term rent the house on the weekends that I can't go down south allows me to supplement the mortgage to be able to buy a house there. I don't think that makes me some big property mogul who's a wealthy investor.
Boris?
I think Karen covered it really well. The other thing that we should always consider, people say it's an investment. Well, let's take a look at how many corporations really own these properties. There is no corporations that own the properties. These are single individuals who own these homes, and they own a second homes. They purchase a property, they rent it out for 2 to 3 years before they retire in the city. And there are many, many instances that we have where people have come, stayed in a short-term rental here in the Valley, and then decided to retire here. So, the problems that they're reporting is a very small batch of bad apples that the city has had a challenge with enforcement and getting them to stop short-term renting. It is not a reflection of every single vacation rental property.
And just to add to what Boris just said, that the majority of the bad apples are ones that have been operating illegally. They're not even the ones that are in compliance with having a permit and paying their TOT. We want them gone too. We don't want that problem in the city.
And just to be clear, both you, Boris, and Karen do not live full-time in Cathedral City, correct?
I'm a local kid here, if you want to say that. I grew up in the Valley. My dad owns a business in Cathedral City. So, just specifically living there, this measure does not only affect Cathedral City, it affects the surrounding areas. It'll affect Palm Springs, Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert. So I'm local. I've been here for, my family has lived here since 1994. So to say that, we're not full-time residents is really not, because all of our cities are so interconnected here.
And Karen, you're also from you're in Northern California, correct?
I'm in Northern California, but the majority of our board is actually comprised of people who are local in the Valley.
Okay. Some of the arguments made by the supporters of Measure B are that it's not just a few bad apples, but that short-term rentals are a major problem throughout the city. So what would you say to that?
So Peter, the challenge that we're having is that vacation rentals have existed in the Valley going back to 50s and 60s. And you can find advertisements of this on multiple papers that were published in San Francisco and so on. So vacation rentals were part of the tourism here in the Valley. What has happened is that the cities are not prepared to enforce rules. And that's exactly what happened here. For many years, the city of Cathedral City has not responded in a timely manner to the residents filing complaints against people who are operating without a permit, who are having parties at the homes. Again, these are the people this is not what we want. And so what has happened is, with the city's failure of addressing these things in a timely manner, and I'll use an example, Cathedral City Code Compliance team last year only worked from Monday through Thursday from 7 in the morning until 6 p.m. Other 3 days of the week, when the residents would call, they would not get a response from the city until the following week. So you can imagine you being a neighbor, asking your city to help you and not getting a response to 3 to 4 days after something has happened. So what's really important is that the local municipalities react quickly to any nuisances from vacation rentals to continue to deliver the quality of life, to the full-time residents. There is definitely bad apples out there, and we work very hard to make sure that they do not represent our group and they're not part of our organizations, and we will help deliver those people to the cities if needed.
And the other part of that is that typically if there is going to be an issue with people not behaving appropriately at a short-term rental, and it is that party crowd, that's going to happen on a Friday or a Saturday, not a Tuesday. And so not having code compliance available to respond on the weekends was a really major downfall of them trying to have any handle on that.
I think that people should know, because to protect the property rights, to protect small businesses that we currently have that are associated with short-term rentals, and just because you're not a full-time resident, you are no less of a person than a full-time resident. You're still paying taxes. There are people on the boards and commissions that serve the city that are not full-time residents. So their rights are just as much important as full-time residents.
All right, Karen and Boris, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.